Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hello and good morning, everyone. This is Stephen Ball, and on the line today we've got Pavel Gloraki. Good morning, Pavel.
Good morning, Stephen.
And also joining us today is John Harrison. Morning, John.
Hey, morning, Stephen, morning, Harold, and hi, everyone.
So I'm going to pretty much hand over to Pavel straight away. This is the first one of our Developer Direct Season 4 sessions, and Pavel's going to take us through today looking at FireDAC, and we're aiming really for kind of 30-minute deep dives through this series. So looking forward to kind of taking you through this newer, slightly shorter format, but hopefully something that allows us to kind of just take a bite of a technology, go and have some time and some fun to play with it, and carry on from there. So as always, feel free to drop us an email over on developerdirect.online@embarcadero.com. And we've also set up, as we did with our last series, a page on the streaming server. So if you want to go to streaming.embarcadero.com, especially for you guys, we've got a new series link in there, and supporting each one of these sessions, we're going to be posting the replay into there. We'll also have a set of links and tutorial bits from DocWiki and other things that we think are kind of fun and interesting for you to kind of pick up and play with, just to support what we're sharing with you through these sessions. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Pavel. John and I will be online with the questions as we go through, and also monitoring the Twitter feed. So feel free to join us on Twitter at #EMBTDD.
Okay, excellent, Steve. So this is the very first session in the season 4 of Developer Direct Online. It's all about FireDAC. So what is FireDAC? So FireDAC is the best database access framework available in RadStudio XE5, Delphi XE5, and C++ Builder XE5. It can be used to talk to all kinds of databases, both local desktop databases and remote enterprise databases, from VCL and FireMonkey applications, both desktop and mobile. So it's really high performant, is very easy to use, is very much like the well-known Borland database engine. It's using the same type of components, same architecture, but at the same time is very high performant. It has universal data access, so supports all major databases, but without hiding some specific features of different databases. When you deploy FireDAC applications, you don't need to deploy any additional drivers. They are compiled into your applications, and all full source code is provided. FireDAC is written in Delphi Object Pascal code. There's also installed some utilities, refined utility you will find in your installation to help you migrate your existing BDE or DB Express databases to FireDAC. So FireDAC basically installs as a number of components. So there are some visual components, some non-visual components, and of course all the classes and drivers to access all different types of databases, including bridging drivers. So you can also include ODBC connections and DB Express connections through the bridge. So I'm going to move directly into the demos because I want to really make sure that we follow this new 30-minute standard. We value your time, so it's not going to be longer than 30 minutes. Let's start with the simple FireDAC 101 application, just to show you how it works and how it fits to create applications with FireDAC. I'm going to start a new VCL Forms application. I'm going to save it. So this is going to be the only application that I'm creating from scratch. I'm going to use some pre-built applications later on. So I'm going to put it into the FireDAC 101 application. And I'm going to just with making the connection. So the first and probably most important component in the list of the FireDAC components is the FireDAC connection. So this component represents a connection to the database, is similar in function to T-SQL connections from DB Express or T-database from BDE. And if you double click this component, you will see a nice editor that lets you connect to the different databases. So you can specify which database driver that you want. So we support different databases like Interbase, like SQL Server, Oracle, and similar. But I'm going to use Interbase. This is our own de facto standard enterprise database solution that is part of the XE5. So you need to point it to some place where you have some database files. So I have a number of database files here, like employee GDB. You can specify the username is DBA, password as master key, and I should be able to, in this moment, try if I can connect to this database. So I can connect to this database, click on OK, and it's always a good idea to put a login prompt to false. Okay, so I have already a connection. So one of my favorite components in BDE architecture was T-table, and we have a similar component in FireDAC. So notice that when I added to the form, it is automatically connected through the connection property with the first connection component that is on the form. So this is faster. You don't have to make this another option. And then you can have a table name, any table from the underlying database. And now, guess what? I'm going to add a T data source component to the form and make sure that it's connected to the data set. And I'm going to add a T checkbox as well that will be controlling if my connection is open or not. And I'm going to add a TDB grid component to the form as well. Okay, I'm going to hook this DB grid component to the data source, and I should see data. So table needs to be active, and I can see data at design time. So this is very straightforward. We've been doing this for many years. If we've been with Delphi or C++ Builder long enough. So I'm going to add this beautiful navigator here as well. So hook it to the data source as well. Okay, so at this very moment, in the typical BDE world, I would be done. So now I'm going to run this application and see if it's running. Okay, I have a problem. So that's something that I was expecting. So that's the reason I'm actually showing you this. So probably if you start the very first time, you will get the similar error. FireDAC is very nice. It provides a very meaningful error messages, so you can, from the description, you can find out what's wrong. So basically what's missing on my form is a physical driver component. So in the FireDAC links category, you can see different components with names starting with TFD fizz, and you can quickly find out which driver you want. So basically, for every database you want to connect to, you need to have this physical driver component. So in this way, you compile into your application the driver, and you don't need to deploy any additional files, like for example DLL in a DB Express architecture. So I know that the next error I would get would be missing weight cursor component, so I just add it. So these are the two components that needs to be there for every FireDAC application, so the weight cursor and the appropriate IB driver link components. In fact, you don't really need the components themselves. It's more about the units that are added to the uses clause that needs to be in place. So now if I save this application and run it, I have now fully functional application. Okay, I have not added the code to this guy. On click event and fd table 1 active should be the same as checkbox 1 checked. So now I can really do it better. Okay, so I start with the inactive and then I can start activating it. Okay, so now it's more functional. Okay, so let's have a look into the tools that come with the FireDAC. So we have in the tools menu FireDAC Explorer and FireDAC Monitor. FireDAC Explorer is a handy, it's an equivalent of the of a similar tool from the BD world, where you have when you can define connections to different databases and use it through a table component. Here you can also define connections to supported databases, so you can in a very handy way you can preview those connections. Master key. So you can see that what are the tables, what is the data inside of these tables, what is the metadata. You can create a new connection. So whatever you configure here will be available inside of your users public documents, RAD Studio, FireDAC. There are FD connection definitions. So this is the file that is actually maintained by this tool. So in this way, if you use connection that is actually defined inside of the ini file, you don't need to hard code the actual location of a database itself. So I can go here again, and instead of specifying the path to the database, I can select one of the connections, for example, my employee database, and this should work as well. So if I just move the employee database file to some different location and I just update the ini file, the application will continue to work. It's also possible to provide all information through the params property. So you can actually see that this is my connection definition employee. I could actually, if I go back to setting the path, all the information will be stored there. So instead of building connection at design time, I could have actually created at runtime and provide all the parameters on the fly. Also, it's possible to execute arbitrary SQL statements against the connected database. So employee, I can just run some queries. I can update data, do different things. I can also see all the information about the connection. So this is part of the tracing functionality, and you can very quickly find out which driver is used, which version of FireDAC we are using, what is the protocol, all very useful debugging information. There is also whole option system. This is very powerful feature of FireDAC that you can control how FireDAC works through a number of almost 100 different options for how the data is formatted, how data is fetched, what are the options for updating, what are the resource options. So this is here very handy. You can change, for example, data mapping rules. So you can, for example, specify which persistent field types of fields should be added to the data sets. So you have a consistent mapping across different database backends. And you can do all different things here. For example, I can specify how my data is fetched. So these options are also available through the object inspector. So you don't have to actually go through the editor. You have format option, fetch options. Also, what is interesting, the options are inherited through all connected components. So we can imagine a situation when I have one connection component and a number of dataset components connected to this connection. So if I change options at the level of the connection, they are propagated automatically to all connected datasets. And locally, at the level of the individual dataset, I can override individual settings that were inherited from the connection component. So this is a very powerful option of FireDAC. Okay, let me jump to my demos and just walk you through some of the selected functionality. So you have here my previous demo, but I'm going to switch into the monitoring demo. So there is a possibility to easily see through this second tool, FireDAC Monitor, the traffic that is happening between your application and the database we are connecting to. So first of all, on the connection component, if I double click, there is a property called remote. So monitor by, and you can specify that it is monitored, and you can send log information to the file, but you can also send it to the remote tool like this FireDAC monitor. Also, you need to add to the form this fdMoni remote client link and set its tracing property to true for this to work. So we are using TCP/IP protocol to trace information between the database and our application. So if I just start the application, I should see that something is happening. So I can see that client has started. If I click on connect, I see so much more information, including the transaction has been created, what protocol we are using, which commands are being sent to the database. You can even see the actual data that was sent to the application. So in this way, FireDAC is very friendly for really tracing, for debugging, for understanding what's happening between your application and the database. So in this way, we can quickly see all the problems, also including the fact that FireDAC comes with the all Delphi source code, so you can really understand how it works internally. Okay, monitoring is very important and powerful feature. Let me show you another example of how powerful is FireDAC. Example of cached updates. So that's something we know from the BDE. Oops, I have managed to crash Delphi by this switching too rapidly. So, but it should wake up very quickly. Okay.
Paul, just whilst that's coming back up, there was a question here about the GUI wait cursor and why you need it. One of the quite nice features around this is that I quite often had, when you've got long-running SQL processes running, you quite often want to change the screen cursor and then change it back at the end of it. Well, with FireDAC, you can just forget about ever having to write that code again because the GUI wait cursor picks up when you've got a long-running transaction and will process that automatically for you. So that's why that component exists, and you just need one of them in your application. Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. Actually, for me, it's kind of unexpected to have this need to have this wait cursor, but this is how the FireDAC is currently architected. So you just need to get used to the fact that it has to be there. Okay, so let me go to the next FireDAC feature, cached updates. So this is really when in the previous example, when I was actually browsing through data through the DB grid, the query component would actually communicate with the database whenever it feels like it. So for example, fetching more packets with data. Sometimes it's not a functionality that we want, when maybe we want exactly to know when we commit, when we send updates and we cancel updates. So in this demo code that I have here, we are using actually a query with a cached updates property set to true. So in this way, I tell the query to actually use cached updates mode. And I also have this filter changes set that let me actually show visually all records that are actually stored inside of the query component. So I can also see these records that has been deleted and just waiting to send this information to the database. Also, there is some drawing code so I can see which components are which. So inserted are green, modify and deleted are red. As if it's deleted, it will have the nice horizontal line. Okay, let me run this application. So I can click on connect, and I can do changes to my application. I can change this Glen to something else. So see, it has changed, but this change has not been yet sent to the database. I can add a component, so, and this will be hello, something, whatever. So this is a new component. I can take one of those records and delete it. So these changes are not yet sent to the database. I can click on cancel updates and all changes will be locally deleted. If I want to change something permanently, I can just click on commit updates, and in this way I can control that my updates are being sent directly to the database. So this is very, very powerful feature of FireDAC, possibility to work with cached updates. Okay, let me go for the next demo. So I have this demo. It's not this demo. I go to my group and go into default layout again. And now it's time for my RIDML. So this is also a very powerful feature that let me actually perform very fast operations on a database in sometimes a level of magnitude faster than in a regular way. So I have a table created in the backend interbase database, and I have two buttons. One is doing inserts, actually quite a lot of inserts, because 10,000 inserts very fast in a traditional way. So I have some counter to see how much time has elapsed. I start the transaction, and in the loop from 1 to 10,000 inserts, I'm actually setting the parameter of the insert statement and just execute this SQL, and then afterwards I'm actually committing the transaction. So this is a traditional way. In a RIDML way, we can do kind of a batches. So we don't really send all those inserts in one operations. They are in a sense batched. So notice some differences here. So the start transactions is the same, but first we actually specify the array size of parameters. So in this way, we effectively create a two-dimensional array of parameters. So in the first dimension, we have just two fields that we assign, one integer field and one string field, and in the second dimension is this 10,000 parameters. So now in our loop, we don't execute this statement 10,000 times. We assign, we prepare our parameters. So we don't have a params assigned directly, but for the params 0 as integers, I'm assigning all integer values, all pairs of parameters. And now I can actually execute. I can specify how many times I want to execute. I can also specify the offset in the params array, how it actually works. So now if I run this application, normal inserts will take me 1.7 seconds. RIDML 0 to 0.65. So this is almost, no, maybe not 10 times faster, but much faster. So this is a feature that is available in many databases. If a certain database does not offer this natively, this feature is actually done through the software. So very quickly, it's 11:27, so nominally I have just 3 more minutes, but I'm going to probably extend it by 2 or more minutes. Connections recovery. So here in the connection, in a FireDAC applications, we can very easily recover connections. So even if temporarily the database is not accessible, the FireDAC can attempt to recover the connection, and it will give you a proper event, so you can do something programmatically with the fact that something went wrong. So on the connection component, there is a property called event on recover, and it passing the by reference an action parameter that we can assign as programmers, and basically do something with it. So in this example, we are actually presenting the end user with the message that the connection is lost. So let me actually start this application. I can connect to the database very nicely, and I'm going to my interbase manager, and I'm going to stop the database server. So now my application works okay, but at some moment of time when it needs more data, it sees that the connection is impossible to make. So I can try to retry, but it does not work. So if I click on start the server again and click on retry OK, my application continues to work. So this is a very powerful feature of FireDAC, possibility to recover from the lost connection. There are two actually more features here, so I'm going to also show you these batch commands. So this is another feature that is quite similar, but I need to have a different, this one. Inside of my batch commands, I have unit one. So this is an interesting feature that you can actually work. FireDAC is universal, so it has some extensions to the SQL syntax. For example, you can see those curly braces that make it possible to have a uniform SQL for different databases. So different databases, the FireDAC installation comes with the Northwind version on different supported databases, and it basically different databases are having different flavors of, for example, naming the database tables. On interbase, you would need maybe to put them in the on a SQL server in a square brackets, for example, on other databases in quotation marks. But here you have an example of a possibility to make two different in one operation to make two select statements, and we can use a special next record set to actually go to the next record set. So there's also the fetch option auto close that needs to be false. So after we select the very first table, it does not go away. So in this way, we have just one set of a connection query, and we can work with more than one table. If I click on regions, I got the first data set. Click on the next record set, I get the next record set. So this is very powerful and very interesting way of making your applications even more powerful. Okay, so these two other demos that I have here are from Carrie Jensen, so I will not work on these macros. Basically, this goes further into how you can work with a parameterized SQL, how you can use queries. The very last demo is very interesting demo, again from the Carrie Jensen recent webinar, No App is an Island, and it shows a capability of doing so-called local SQL. So sometimes you wish that you could actually do joins on tables that are actually local to your application. So this FD local SQL components make it possible. So we have two different data sets. There is one data set that comes from the typical client data set from the flat file, and it gives us an employee data set. But there is also access connection, local access file that has a connected query that retrieves orders from the access connection. So now we would like to be able to actually make a query against these two different data sets. This could be not necessarily even a FireDAC data set, any data, T data set compliant object. So we have this FD local SQL connection, FD local SQL component. It has the property data sets. Here you can actually specify two different data sets that are actually somehow aggregated with this local SQL, and you can make a query against this local SQL. So now the query itself is actually, let me show you, this SQL statement is, you have an inner join between these two tables. So now we should be able to see data from orders, but also joined with the employee table on the employee number field. So now if I just run this application, you should see that I can now work with the data that is actually coming from the query that combined data from different data sets sources on my application. Okay, so it's a bite-size presentation. So here are more references for FireDAC. There is a product page of FireDAC. There is a documentation page of the FireDAC, which is very useful. There is a FAQ, frequently asked questions. And also I recommend going to the recording and the white paper and code samples of the recent Kari Jensen FireDAC webinar, No App is an Island. Here actually you can see those resources. So this is the FireDAC product page with lots of information. Here is the FireDAC online documentation, which is very nice and great source of information about FireDAC. And also here is the No App is an Island starting page from the Kari Jensen webinar. Okay, so let me just go to the very last slide. If my computer actually works. PowerPoint somehow does not let me scroll, but I don't care.
Hey, I think that's
we are almost
pretty
done with
cool.
the slides.
I've put a couple of those links into the chat there, so if you guys want to grab those quickly, feel free to click on there. Definitely the Kari Jensen webinar is really good to go and have a look at. The other thing I would say, there's a whole load of tech resources and additional sessions just at the RAD in action pages. So if you just go to /rad-in-action on the embarcadero.com website, and there's a whole set of different sessions and bits there. That's a page that's well worth bookmarking and putting in your favourites. There's a question here, Pavel, you may be able to just answer around the source code for the sessions. Is that part of the samples that go with the product? Is it available for download from Quality Central, from Code Central, or from somewhere else? Or
actually, some of the very last demo that I have demonstrated, this local SQL, is part of the Kari Jensen code. All other demos actually are the ones I have created, and I will make sure that they are available for download. So I will put a link on my blog, and hopefully also there will be some references on the streaming server. So
yeah, we can
all
link those in there.
demos that I have demonstrated will be made available to the attendees of this session.
Great.
Okay, my PowerPoint don't work anymore, but
okay,
I think
that's
it's
fine.
more important that RAD Studio works. So I think we are good in a sense that it's 30 minutes. So it was a great fun. I hope that you like this new formula of very condensed a demo-oriented session, so we don't have an opportunity to go into the detail into every corner of such a rich technology, like for example FireDAC, in just these 30 minutes, but at least it gives you some high-level understanding on what it is, how it looks, what it can do for you, and we will be trying to do the same thing in 2 weeks with Stephen. What it will be?
Visual live bindings in a couple of weeks, so I'm going to be going over how it works and some pretty cool ways of mixing it up and kind of getting things in. So look forward to seeing you some back. Yeah, thank you, Jens. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Just before everybody goes today, what does help us in terms of getting these sessions ready and making sure they're relevant for you guys is knowing a little bit about what you're doing and where you're at. So please feel free to drop us an email telling us about the great projects that you're working on, but also on the screen at the moment. In the meantime, if you could just quickly click on there and tell us which version you're currently on, that would be very, very useful to just help with shaping these. Now, the other thing is this following week, we have an XE6 preview webinar. I know from looking at the numbers, a huge amount of people have already registered for that. So we may end up having to run kind of 2 separate streams of it. But please do get registered up. I put the link into the chat for the XE6 first look. So please do register and get along to that. I think there's some really, really exciting stuff. There's a few updates for FireDAC in there as well, including the capability to not always have to put the physical driver link down, which Pavel showed at the start. So there's some great stuff coming through. For those of you still online, if you can, please quickly vote on the screen and tell us know which version you're on. I'll be closing that poll in just a moment.
So I have been using Delphi XE5 update 2. So after the XE6 preview webinar, we may even switch to XE6.
Okay, there's the results for you guys of the webinar poll there. A few of you asking about versions for FireDAC. FireDAC was introduced into XE4 and so you need to be on a new version for it. XE5 had some naming changes that were done just to bring it in line with the FireDAC setup and some other stuff that we're working on through with it, and to make it a little bit less confusing to people who are using ADO. But I don't know about you, Pavel. I've certainly had people kind of telling me that I had one guy who was using, because everything's native driver connections in FireDAC, he was telling me that to connect to a Microsoft SQL Server, he swapped over from ADO connections to FireDAC and was reporting that he was getting about a 25%, 30% speed increase in his application just overnight from making that one change, because of all those options you were showing earlier, with the fetching blobs on demand and the fetching of the road packets as it needs it and all that kind of stuff. It really does speed up your applications. So great. Okay, I think.
Thank you guys for watching. So we will see each other on the next session on visual live bindings in about 2 weeks from now.
Okay, see you guys soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye.